Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. Okay, so it's a new day. I'm re-energized. I'm not wiped out like I was at the end of yesterday. Okay, so I'm ready to tackle the second column. This is just going to be, for the most part, a repeat of what I did on the first column. The exception is I did take my own advice. I ran to Lowe's, which is the only place I could find it, and got a 1 1/8 inch impact socket. So this is going to make tuning and shimming the position of this column a whole lot easier. Another good reason to go get that socket was to use it on my torque wrench. Now there is no torque wrench that at least that I own, that will work without having the right size socket. The bolts, the anchor bolts on each column are spec'd out to 85 foot-pounds of torque. And so regardless of the convenience of putting on and taking off the bolts or the nuts with a socket versus a wrench, in the end I had to have the socket in order to torque the bolts properly. One problem I ran into was I couldn't get the column to square up properly. I would kind of get it in a square, then I would adjust it, it would shift again. And what I found was that I had already tightened the bolts on the top beam that was connected to the two columns, and so it was being held out of square. Once I loosened those bolts up, then I was able to square it up no problem. So just keep that in mind. I found a slightly more efficient way to do this, picking up the carriage so that I can drill the holes. I just took the forklift and slid one of the forks underneath it and just picked it right up, no problem. One thing I did realize this time, there's a pulley on the bottom where this cable runs through. I need to make sure that it stays in that pulley when I drop it back down, and I need to go recheck the other one and make sure that I didn't screw that one up. Well, that one went a lot faster than the first one. Maybe I'm just getting better. Maybe I simply don't suck at it as much. That's two ways to look at it. Now, I did find some issues, and when I went back and I looked at the first column, I had the same problems where the anchor bolt wasn't grabbing soon enough. I was ending with way too much sticking out, which meant that it was not embedded far enough into the concrete. So what I found was by backing off and driving it back down in and using my impact wrench to get it started, that it seemed to grab quicker, and then I could use the torque wrench to finish it off, get it to the right torque, and I ended up with way less bolts sticking out. So I've got, you know, as much as 3/4 of an inch or more extra bolt inside the concrete, grabbing it deeper in the concrete. So watch out for that, and if you find you can't get the thing to grab quick enough, maybe hammer it back down in there, try again like I did with an impact wrench. It seemed to make a big difference. Now here's something that's particularly irksome, and just an example of not thinking through a design. I'm trying to tighten up the bolts that are holding the top beam or connecting it to the column. And there's a flange on the outside of the column where the beam bolts to. Well, the holes are so tight up against the back of the column, you can't get a socket onto it. And given the way it's tucked up in there, it's virtually impossible to get a wrench on it. In fact, I'm having to use an adjustable wrench straight on and holding it, you know, like this way instead of sideways like you should, because that's the only way to get a wrench on it. If you just move, Atlas, if you will just move those bolt holes 1/4 of an inch out away from the face of the column, or the inside face of the column, it would make your assemblers' lives so much easier. Please do that. Well, this is a beautiful sight. Both columns up into the opening through the ceiling. Everything looks good. Everything's bolted down. The top beam is bolted in place. Everything's relatively plumb and square. I'm pretty happy, even though this has taken me way longer than I thought it would. Uh, I'd say this is at least, I put in a day and a half of solid work, partly just because of being careful, partly just don't know really what I'm doing. I'm sure an experienced installer could do this way quicker than I could. But at least I think the hard part is done. Now it's a question of starting to put all the pieces together, and that starts with the synchronization cables and the hydraulic lines. As always, go down there, find that thumbs up button and give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and most important, once you subscribed, go find that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button and click on it. Make sure it has the little lines next to it. Looks like it's ringing. That way you've turned on notifications and YouTube will let you know every time that I post new stuff from here in Cliff's Garage. See you next time.